A normal morning, or so she thought. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled Nancy's small apartment. Tuesday morning had arrived. Like every other day, it began with a familiar routine. Nancy, a 40-year-old woman with a heart full of hope and a calendar filled with to-do lists, was a creature of habit. She sipped her coffee, each drop a warm reminder of the day ahead. As she got dressed, a sharp, stinging sensation erupted on her shoulder. She paused, her hand instinctively reaching back to touch the irritated spot. Her fingers found two small, perfectly round holes on her skin. Puzzled, Nancy examined the marks in the mirror. They were too symmetrical to be accidental. The skin surrounding the holes was red and inflamed. An insect bite, perhaps? She had been outdoors over the weekend, enjoying a rare sunny day with a hike through the nearby nature preserve. It wouldn't be unusual to pick up a stray mosquito bite, or two. She shrugged off the discomfort and continued with her day. Work was its usual whirlwind of emails, phone calls, and deadlines. Nancy, a paralegal at a bustling law firm, thrived in the fast-paced environment. As she sat at her desk, though, her mind kept returning to the strange marks on her shoulder. They itched persistently, and the skin around them felt hot to the touch. She thought back to her date the previous night. It had been a typical first date, filled with awkward silences and forced conversation. John, a software engineer she had met online, was pleasant enough, but there were no sparks. They had dinner at a crowded Italian restaurant, and then he walked her back to her apartment. Nothing out of the ordinary. He hadn't touched her shoulder, had he? No, she was sure of it. They had barely made any physical contact at all. The memory brought a wry smile to her face. It wasn't unusual for her dates to fizzle out. Finding someone special in this city felt like an impossible task. Still, she held on to hope. As the day wore on, the discomfort in her shoulder intensified. The area around the bites, if that's what they were, had swollen considerably. The itching was relentless, and Nancy found herself scratching at it unconsciously. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. Something wasn't right. This was more than just a bug bite. Panic began to set in, a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. She needed to see a doctor. Immediately. She rushed out of the office, ignoring the curious glances from her colleagues. Her phone rang in her purse, the insistent chime only adding to her growing sense of dread. She ignored it. The doctor's office was a sterile, brightly lit space. Nancy sat on the edge of the examination table, her leg bouncing nervously. She had called ahead, explaining her symptoms to the receptionist, who had managed to squeeze her in for an emergency appointment. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear accompanying each anxious thought. What if it was something serious? The door swung open, and Dr. Lewis, a kind-faced woman with a calming demeanor, entered the room. Nancy explained her symptoms, her voice trembling slightly. She showed the doctor the strange marks on her shoulder. Dr. Lewis examined the area carefully, her brow furrowed with concern. "I've never seen anything quite like this before," she admitted, her voice hushed. She gently probed the swollen area, causing Nancy to wince in pain. "I'm going to need to run some tests." Dr. Lewis stepped away from the examination table and picked up the phone. She spoke in a low, urgent tone, her words too quiet for Nancy to make out. Nancy's anxiety spiked. The doctor's demeanor had shifted, a palpable sense of urgency replacing her previous calm. Something was very wrong. "I'm calling 911, Dr. Lewis said, hanging up the phone. Her voice was sharp, her eyes wide with alarm. "I need to get you to the hospital right away."